Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I hope all of you are having a wonderful day. As we get things kicked off here, we have a great guest for you where we will be talking to, in the first part of the show, a company called Square Panda. And they do everything with early child education and, to talk all about their product and what they do and how they do it. We have, I think one of the best people for the job, and that will be the CEO of the company, Mr. Andy Butler. So before we get to him and before we get to Square Panda, a couple of things to mention, including computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything from a link to our guest website or of course our contest, which is our social media contest sponsored by Logitech, or of course the live video stream where you can watch Computer America and not just listen. All of that and more at our homepage. Also, be sure to, it's also handy for later on in the program when we do computer and technology news and we cover a bunch of different topics. And, if you're busy, if you're driving, if you're working, don't worry, we throw them all in there. And hey, you can check it out later if you so choose. But we are still a radio show and hey, this is still our bread and butter. So why don't we go ahead and jump right into our conversation. So joining us is, of course, as I mentioned, Square Panda, Andy Butler, CEO. And Andy, thank you for joining us here on Computer America.
My great pleasure. Thank you.
So why don't we start from the beginning? That's the best place to start. Talk to us a bit about Square Panda, what are its roots, and then talk about yourself. What's your background, and how'd you find yourself working with Square Panda?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So Square Panda is a company that's uniquely focused on using the latest research from major academic institutions to impact language and literacy skills, making for young children through the age of 2 through 7 years of age, when 85% of a brain's neurological connections get formed to become proficient at language skills. And we've developed a product that is tablet-based, either iPad or Android-based, that's multi-sensory, literally using a playset with physical letters, and that is a phonics platform. I became involved in this. I'm a serial entrepreneur, primarily because, my daughter, we discovered when she was 4 years of age, was dyslexic, as is 17% of the world's population, for those that aren't familiar with dyslexia. And those who are familiar know that, dyslexia and IQ are totally unrelated subjects. Like even people like Albert Einstein couldn't read till they were age 17 years of age. And so like a lot of parents of dyslexic children, I read everything I possibly could. And I was roundly disappointed that most of what I read gave me, pathways of remediation that were anecdotal at best. And as a technologist, I went, where's the large sample base? Where's the A/B studies? Where is the latest research on how I can best implement a program for my daughter to become proficient at reading? And so that led me to Stanford University, where my wife happens to be a professor of medicine and got us introduced to the education department. And I learned about all the great research that has been happening in the last decade, where neurologists have crossed over into the field of education and are bringing actual studies of brain scans as children are exposed to curriculum, and they've taken kind of the art out of what curriculum is most effective at what particular age group, and actually can show which curriculum and what exposure to certain types of exercises causes the appropriate brain growth that leads to reading fluency and also secondary language acquisition. So
Very
that's
cool.
that's my background and the background on the company.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, this is our favorite type of company to interview on the show, where someone sees a need that's unfulfilled and they go about, hey, filling that need in the marketplace. And I guess, this is one that has a lot of history, background, sometimes superstition when it comes to child education. What age should they learn? And I guess you're approaching this from an even more eclectic kind of side because obviously dyslexia, like you said, 17%. Many of those I'm sure are undiagnosed, and so the number seems even smaller. And you are working with an underrepresented, kind of segment of the population, and you can see where curriculum in your everyday school, daycare, prep school, what have you, is not catered to, the 10% of their students, is not catered to the small minority. It's catered to obviously, the kids that can read, just everyday things. So I see here you have a need and you start to fill it. You have a personal interest in this. Let's talk about others who may be, and actually you could probably speak to this as a parent as well. Um, what were some of the early signs that your kid was having trouble? Maybe other people can say, "Oh yeah, maybe mine too." And then, how did you go about designing Square Panda to do that? Talk about the features
Sure.
of the product.
Yeah. I mean, just to be clear, we're not uniquely focused on
Right,
dyslexia.
right.
It's only 20% of children are what we call natural readers. If you expose them to enough oral language and you put them in a room full of books, natural readers will teach themselves. The rest of the population, 80%, will struggle at some point in learning to read. It's why in the United States, the shocking figure of 66% of all kids are not reading fluently by the fourth grade, and the 34% that are reading fluently have a pathway of success where 95% of those kids will go on to college, and the 66% that aren't, 85% of those will not go on to college.
Crazy.
And will struggle in their educational pursuits. So we are focused on specifically identifying whatever the learning challenge is with respect to reading as early as possible, ideally as early as 2 and 3 years of age, and then having specific game-based curriculum that exercises the brain in very specific ways so that child time efficiently, and hopefully painlessly too, through play-based activities, passes through that and moves on to the next level. And so, our goal is to get kids fully positioned to be fluent readers by the third grade.
Very, very good. So let's talk about parents and how you see Square Panda being worked into an everyday curriculum. Maybe parents teaching their kids at home or in daycares or in, again, more formal situations. Where do you see Square Panda fitting in? Like, do people just throw away those books because, hey, you have Square Panda? Is this an activity that you sit them in front of for 15 minutes? I mean, how does your product fit into education as a whole?
Yeah, so we absolutely don't recommend that people throw away their books.
Good.
The most useful, effective thing a parent can do with their child, even beyond our own play set, is to read to their child 1 hour a night, 4 nights a week. I mean, and ideally, it's actually shown, and I spoke about the brain scans, we can actually show greater neural activity when the child sits on their parent's lap or has some physical contact with the parent as they read. So absolutely, please do not throw away those books. And
Right.
even if the child isn't reading, the act of reading is exposing that child to a broad spectrum of phonemes, and there's 45 phonemes in the English language. Just exposing your child to that broad spectrum and the diversity of the English language helps them differentiate one phoneme from the next. Even before they know what phonemes go in what words, the ability to identify and uniquely segregate phonemes is the first step in a child's acquisition of language skills. So that's what happens when a parent reads to their child or just speaks to the child and/or speaks to the child as an adult. Please do not speak to your child in baby talk because you're just repeating the phonemes that they already know. You want to expose them to the full, again, 45 phonemes in the English language as soon as possible.
Right.
So with our specific device, what we do is we, are very specific about phonics, and we ask parents, to limit their child's play to 15, 20 minutes a day, and that's sufficient. And so when a child picks up the letter, feels the shape of the letter, places it into the play set, and the tablet comes back and say you've got a K, and the K has a ka sound, what they're doing is they're doing pattern recognition, what academics will call alphabetic awareness. That is just differentiating one abstract shape or alphabet from the next, and then letter-sound correspondence, understanding that that letter, whose name is K, has a ka sound, is an act where the auditory section of the brain starts speaking to the visual section of the brain, which aren't naturally connected. And those little synapses start forming between those two areas of the brain. And then if they remember it, then synapses get formed to the auditory memory section of the brain. And that's what you're stimulating. You're stimulating these activities through these diverse areas of the brain, which causes synapses to be formed. And our play set accelerates that. So we're walking the child through pattern recognition, letter-sound correspondence, associating sounds with the letters of the alphabet, and then basic word formation, starting with consonant-vowel consonant constructs like rat and cat, teaching them pattern recognition like rhymes. Then when they start to see how all these weird shapes come together to form sounds, and these weird sounds blended together form words that have meanings, we start expanding upon that base and start teaching them more complex words, like, words that start with a CH, like chat. Yes, it does rhyme with rat, but now you've learned the cha sound, which is a separate phoneme. So we build and build and build to this scope and sequence phonics program, all the way to the point where the child is ready to take off and read out of books themselves, and they can start to decode themselves and get to the point where they convert from phonics reading to sight word reading.
Right. A lot of questions there. One of them is, of course, in this day and age of technology, I'm sure you had a lot of options when you were designing this product. And, for anyone out there watching the video portion, we have your website up. There are kids demonstrating the product, and like you said, there are letters that you essentially have laying on the floor or on the table next to you. And, the kid will be able to put them in, looks to be about 8 or 9 different slots on the tablet. So I wanted you to speak to why it had to be, you have here multisensory, because, digital is much easier to do, just software, poking on a tablet. I think kids are actually more used to that than what you're presenting here, but you made sure you had a physical approach to this as well. Why was that so important?
Well, there's extensive research that shows when you have a physical activity associated with visual and auditory, you get a stronger cognitive impression, which means you remember something in a more pronounced way and you remember it longer. So there's a very solid foundation that when you incorporate multisensory, and this has been known for years, it's been practiced in, for example, Montessori skills. They have kids draw big A's in the air and repeat the sound of the A, because that motor muscle memory, when it's an audio and a visual component is added to it, just helps the child remember it sooner, faster, longer. There's that basis. There's also a surprising side effect of having physical letters, and we get this from all the schools that we're in right now, and teachers are rapidly adopting our platform because they know about how important it is to have this multisensory component. But we've had teachers phone us up and go, the most amazing thing happens with your program with a tablet that doesn't happen in software-only platforms, app-only platforms. When children have an app-only, auditory and visual, stimulation only, they go into a cocoon by themselves. They isolate themselves and they become immersed. And it manifests itself by when we call out their name, Johnny doesn't turn around. He stops hearing and associating with the rest of the world. When they have a physical component, it keeps them connected to the physical world. You call the name, they turn around. They play, they socialize with each other. They play simultaneously on the playset together. They stay connected because there's a physical connection to it. It's kind of a wonderful ergonomic side benefit of having these physical letters.
So tell me more about this adoption into schools, because obviously I'm sure that you could get this for a home. If your kid's still a bit young, you can get it for them at home. But it's cool to hear that the schools are adopting it. How's that going? You mentioned teachers are finding some surprising corollaries using your product. How's the adoption in schools going?
So the adoption is going really, really well. People told us when we started this company that the school marketplace was slow to adopt and take on new technologies. Because we're supplementary, we're not replacing somebody's entire curriculum, we're just reinforcing it. What we've found is schools are willing right off the bat to experiment with it, and they'll buy 1 or 2 sets. And then once they have it for 3 or 4 months, they start rolling it out school-wide. And we're, in a very short period of time, we're in 85 unified school districts across the nation. And we're also being adopted overseas. In China, we're being used as an English language learning platform. And we're currently about 50% of our sales are coming from China. We're literally exploding over there for a similar type of reason. We're effective.
Right. No, and that's that was one of my questions going to be for later, was obviously designing these platforms and the letters alone. This leads me to believe that this is for learning English, correct? Like this wouldn't be good for you don't have like a Spanish version or a German version of the app.
So we're currently English only, but later this year we're rolling out in Spanish, and it's our intention to be a multilingual platform, a multilingual phonics-based platform. And we have on our roadmap to introduce not only Spanish, but also French and also phonetic Chinese, what's called pinyin.
Very, very cool. And hey, Chinese makes sense if they're really gravitating towards your product. So let's talk about your product and more specifically how kids, really learn to use these letters with the app, because, just having letters there and being like, hey, put the A in the slot and the letter A and then you're done. And that's not really engaging. So how are you getting kids engaged in the activities that will eventually teach them to read and then, actually read?
Yeah, so we have over 10 games out right now, and they're all free. But every game is targeted towards a specific, not age group, but skill level, if you will, starting from just simple alphabetic awareness, differentiating the A from the V shape. And then from that alphabetic kind of differentiation, we take them into letter-sound correspondence and then further word games associated. And it's all play-based. I mean, we go from curriculum that is differentiated as our tropical bowling game, which has a set series of words. It's going to, march the child through on an adaptive basis. When we see competence with a simple, construct, a word construct, we advance the child to a more advanced one. To another game, which is completely exploratory. It's our Lagoon game, which allows a child to put any series of letters down in any one of the 8 slots. And when they want to hear the phonetic pronunciation of those words, whether it's a nonsense word or a real word, they just tickle the chameleon's belly, and he eats the letters and then pronounces the word that's formed. And that particular game was actually based on a game I used to play with my daughter, where she would do something similar but write it down on a piece of paper. And I only allowed her 5 words. And what I noticed from that experience was the nonsense words is what she thought was absolutely hilarious and kept her engaged. And engagement's an important part of what we do, because if the children aren't having fun and being engaged, we don't have the opportunity for education. So one day when my daughter, thinking she'd really mess me up and give me a word that I'd struggle with pronouncing, she wrote SWIM, and she was, keep in mind, she's dyslexic. And though she's reading fluently now, one of the things dyslexics struggle with is spelling after they learn to phonetically decode. So she spelled SWIM, and I said swim, and I saw her eyes light up. I saw a big smile on her face. She discovered the word swim on her own. And from that point on, she owned it because it wasn't rote education being forced on her, told to repeat and repeat and repeat. She discovered it. And literally that emotional outburst, we know, reinforces the memory. How many times in our own lives when we remember the things that caused us pleasure better than the things that bored us, for example. And so the act of exploration and discovery is an underutilized, it's a well-known technique in academia, but it's underutilized in school system because it's so hard to create curriculum around it. We were able to do it through the miracle of tablets and game-based and this physical interactivity.
Right. So we've interviewed other education technology kind of segments companies, and they've seen great success, and I'm wondering if you have as well in not only gamifying the lessons. Obviously you said you had 10 different games, but just like people, just like everyone else, of any age, people definitely like working towards a goal. They like that they can look at something and go, I completed that. I have that down. Is there any kind of high score? Is there a ranking system? Is there anything that a kid or a parent can look at and go, my kid is really understanding letters. This is good.
Yeah, we have a parent portal that the parent can pull up, and there's the child is given various badges. For example, we spoke earlier about consonant vowel consonant words, and there's a badge for that, and they can literally look and see how filled up the badge is, and when it reaches full saturation, you can actually print out that badge and award it to the child. So the parent is not only getting feedback on their child's advancement on this important skill, but then the child can also be rewarded.
Makes sense. And we'll talk about the parent portal in just a moment, but we should talk about what ages this is for, because, obviously if it's school, it sounds like it could be, anywhere from toddler to young child. What ages do you recommend for your product?
So, every child develops at a different rate. We say the starting point is when the child shows enough motor skills that they can pick the letters up and place it in the playset, which is typically around 24 months. Some kids a little later, some kids a little earlier. That's when they should start playing with it because their brains are forming rapidly at that period of time, especially with respect to language skills.
Okay. And so, and of course, starting younger is obviously better. And, you've already said plenty of research. I've read similar things that, the younger you can get those synapses firing and connecting and doing that kind of thing, the better off the kids are going to be, that they can build upon it. So younger, the better. But you have here 2, so that's a pretty good general age. Let's talk about this parent portal and what the parent role is in all this, because, just like you said with reading to your kids, sitting there with them, reading, talking with them is just as important. I mean, a parent, I would think the role for the parent with Square Panda would be more than here's the tablet and then 15 minutes later, give me the tablet. It should be a bit more than that, right? What role does the parent portal play, and what role does the parent play with Square Panda?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting is we've talked to, we're a startup company, so we have investors and the like, and we're venture invested and everything. And some of our investors initially said, why are you tackling both the school market and the parent market at the simultaneously? You're doing so well in the schools. Why do you even bother with the parents? And it's because we're equally motivated by business, making our business successful, as we are by the societal impact. You cannot change that 66% statistic of children not reading fluently by the 4th grade without getting parental involvement. So the parent plays an absolute critical role. There's only so much school systems can do with respect to the children on this language skill acquisition. Parents are absolutely critical because there's an emotional connection there, and there's also just the sheer number of hours that the parent spends with the child. in terms of exposing them to the full spectrum of adult language, in terms of, reading to them, in terms of playing with them on the play set. The play sets are designed to be self-directed. We encourage parents to actually, especially with the exploratory, the Lagoon game that I mentioned earlier, is especially to get involved by taking pictures of the pet and the name. If you got a dog named Fido, spell Fido, take a picture of Fido. That'll get posted on the child's personal database, and when the child spells Fido, it's going to see the picture of Fido. And the reason these are important is these words of familiarity, classmates' names, brother, sister's name, the name of the street they live on, take a picture of the street sign. All of those words are the words they hear with the greatest frequency in a given day. And so when they learn to spell them out and then they hear it repeated during the normal course of the day, the lesson gets reinforced, reinforced, and reinforced. And their skill increases at a more rapid rate. So the parents can play a really fun and kind of integral part of the database that drives the child's exposure to language.
Makes sense. So let's talk about where you can buy this. And I was poking around your website. I see here that all of the games are also available on Apple and Google Play Store. Talk about where you can buy the actual physical tablet, what that actually holds, and what you get with that, and then talk about the games and the fact that you can acquire them on any device.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, the games are both Android and iOS compatible. You can buy the unit on Amazon.com. You can buy it on SquarePanda.com. You can also go on Barnes and Noble stores right now and purchase them out of the store. We're also in Learning Express, and you can buy it in the Learning Express stores if they're in your vicinity.
Very, very good. So, and just real quick, I mean, we heard about your company through CES 2018. I think you guys were also there. I see here you have an award for CES 2017. Talk about your experience at CES. How'd that go for you this year? Because that's a lot of different eyeballs and a lot of people that you meet talking to you about your product.
Yeah, it was exhausting, to be frank.
Yeah,
it was nonstop 4 days of just intensive booth traffic from not only from interested retailers, and we actually had a fair visitation rate from educators who are attending CES, which was completely surprising. So we had leads from school systems, and then just a whole flood of international inquiry. So we're looking at expanding in other countries besides. We're currently in the U.S., North America, Canada, and China, but now we have a whole slew of international potential partners.
Very, very cool. And I see here Andre Agassi, the tennis legend, is involved. So talk about celebrity endorsements; those never hurt. Talk about Andre's interest in this project.
Sure. So Andre's been involved for 2 years now. He's both an investor in the company and a board member. But the reason he's involved is it's not business. He cares an enormous amount about education and believes the single biggest way you can impact a child's life is to start them on the right path in their education experience. And Andre, for those who aren't familiar with his education or just from background, just familiar with his tennis fame, is he's been involved for the last 20 years in education. He founded 2 charter schools in the Las Vegas area that were in the poorest districts of Las Vegas, where graduation from high schools were below 40%. And out of his 2 schools, they've graduated over 90% to high school, and I think the number is close to 75% of those then went on to college. So he's had an enormous amount of success, and he is dedicated his post-tennis career life to education.
Very, very nice. And Andy, I'll ask you this. Could you stay over for just a couple minutes? We're about to head into a break. And then I want to ask you on the other side, your future plans and, talking about maybe rolling in numbers and things like that. Would you mind staying over?
Sure.
Perfect.
Would love to.
Perfect. So everyone, we are talking to Mr. Andy Butler. He is the CEO of Square Panda. And of course, you can find more at squarepanda.com. We have a link to it in the show notes. Everyone, the music means we're taking a break. We'll be right back. More Computer America, more Square Panda right after this. Stay tuned, everyone. We'll be right back.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 31 minutes past the hour as we continue on here with our guest, Mr. Andy Butler. And he is the CEO of Square Panda. We've been talking all about, early childhood education and their product to help, kids really understand letters and words and how they all play together. And hey, if you missed any part of the interview, you can listen to the podcast of the show, which is just a rebroadcasting, and it can be heard on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google Play Store, Spreaker, SoundCloud, blah, 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 wherever podcasts are heard. So in the meantime, Andy continues on with us, and I wanted to get, of course, kind of the next steps, because you mentioned a number of times that you're working on getting a couple more languages under your belt. That would be amazing as well, and not just for those children of that language learning their language, but maybe even other kids, maybe English speakers, taking the first steps into learning other languages. But let's so far we've only talked about letters and words and how they all play together. What about numbers, and do you see your product taking any other, kind of branching out in any other ways?
The area of language skill acquisition and literacy skill acquisition is so deep, and there's so many different ways you can approach it, and with interventions that are very specific to a child, especially when you start looking at the challenges of a Chinese child learning English, or eventually, it's going to go in the opposite direction where we look at, the French market, and it's not only the French market learning English, but those French students want to learn Chinese. What is the specific curriculum for those children? Because their exposure to phonemes is different than English children. So, it's a whole different curriculum for French children learning Chinese, for example, than it would be for English students learning Chinese, and vice versa, in all the different directions. And so this area is so rich and so deep that we just, at least for the next several years, we just don't see ourselves branching out of, literacy and multilingualism for a while. There's a lot of work to be done. Now, what you'll see multiple modes of physical interactivity as they learn, and you'll also see many, many new apps coming out with different, level settings and different adaptive capabilities.
I gotcha. No, that's certainly a good place to be, where too much to do, not enough time to do it. And no, that sounds great. So again, just to be clear, I was looking here. So you have a version for the home and a version for the school. If you could talk about the differences between the two and how much Square Panda costs.
Yeah, so for the home, Square Panda is $99.95. The apps are all free. It comes with the parent portal. It comes with 45 letters, more than the 26 in the alphabet, because, you spell words with multiple vowels typically. And so, we have those additional letters, and it comes with a free cloud database for your child to store all those pictures that I mentioned earlier and the names that are familiar to them and that are not in our generic, database of words that get added to theirs, and then also their history of success and lessons and learnings from their interactivity. All that comes included in the $99.95 price. The school version includes software that is teacher specific with educational parameters and information that most parents, who don't have the education background, couldn't utilize. So we have an entirely different package for school systems.
I gotcha. And those are both available through, of course, your website or, like you said, a number of retailers. So, Andy, I'll let you have the last word. If people want to find out more, I guess send it to your website. Anything else you want to say? Maybe social media, what have you?
Just that reading is absolutely critical to your children. Do not take it for granted. Some parents believe that all they have to do is send their kid to pre-K and kindergarten, and that's sufficient. It's absolutely not the case. So be involved with your child's, acquisition of language skills, and hopefully you'll look at Square Panda and include that in your program.
Absolutely. And by the way, just as a just as a personal note, because I do kind of try to keep up on new things for the show here. You mentioned that that your daughter has dyslexia, and I was just kind of wondering if you had ever heard of a font, different fonts that actually help with dyslexia.
So dyslexia is a pretty broad term, and it's not just pattern recognition. Most dyslexics may struggle with pattern recognition or alphabetic awareness, but it's really, a lot of dyslexics just have a hard time remembering sounds and this, sound memory. So that's a whole other area of dyslexia, which, fonts aren't going to impact you. It's, for example, my daughter, I would correct her. She would say, "What's that fur?" And I'd say, "That's for," and she'd repeat it for a day and have it for a day, but then lose it the next day, and she'd be back to saying fur. And you have to just stay on that to help the child acquire those auditory memory skills. So there's a lot of different components to dyslexia, and pattern recognition is one. But the fonts I have heard of for children that are having trouble recognizing the alphabet,
Right.
I have heard that the different fonts do work sometimes.
Okay. No, and again, I just want to know, I mean, if nothing else, you just showed once again, you've really done your research. You've really talked to a lot of experts on this. So that's definitely good to know. So, but I will say, once again, thank you so much for coming on the show. And Andy, I'm looking forward to talking with you, seeing what you guys develop next. And good luck over at Square Panda. You have a really special project going on.
Thanks, Ben. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I look forward to staying in touch with you.
Our pleasure. So until next time, Andy, have a great day.
You too. Take care.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, everyone. So there he goes. And yeah, so Square Panda, you can find more at squarepanda.com. Link to it in the show notes, and check that out. So in the meantime, though, we have more computer and technology news to cover. And this is a segment where we dedicate, the last portion of the show to staying up to date on the latest and greatest tech stories out there. And folks, we have a lot. We have some very cool ones, some breaking gadgets, or actually I should say not breaking gadgets, some new gadgets, breaking news, and other things. So everyone, here we go. Computer and technology news brought to you by Fire Dragon Security. Here we go. All right, and I think we're going to start off with this one because it's already making waves, and it's because of the form factor, not so much the size of the memory, but the memory is no slouch either. Or rather, I should say, it's the size of the memory in the form factor. That's the impressive part. So here we go. This coming to us from The Verge, and in Integral Memories, new 512 gigabyte. Yeah, 512 gigabyte micro SD card is the biggest micro SD card yet, or probably the most memory crammed into a micro SD card. So they said that there's a new king of the micro SD card where integral memory's 512 gigabyte per second micro SD card, which packs a record-breaking half terabyte of storage into a small micro SD card format. And of course, they said that the previous record holder was SanDisk and their 400 gigabyte. That was the previous one. And they say it's still a bit faster than the integral memories, but they said that they both top out at about, 80 megabits per second read rate speed. And they said that the new 512 gigabyte micro SD card is classified as an SDXC UHS-IU1 card. That's right. All those letters mean that it's compatible with a number of different devices. This is, I think, a pretty standard type of micro SD card. The only thing not standard about it is the size of the memory. So that's what you should really be trying to, take notice of. And they said that it meets the V10 standard for video transfer rates, so it's designed to capture full HD videos off cameras. So if you have an HD shooting video camera, slap this thing in, 512 gigabytes, that's going to hold a heck of a lot of video before you have to swap them for one another. Very, very cool. So the article says that no price was given, but it's almost guaranteed to be expensive when it launches sometime in February. And yeah, and again, they didn't mention a price, usually because these things are not prohibitively expensive, but they're expensive compared to others. And, you could probably take the standard going rate of whatever the, general bell curve of dollars to gigabytes it is, but then you can pretty much double it, for whatever the 512 is. You're paying for the form factor. You're paying for the fact that, it's undoubtedly going to be cheaper to pay for two 256 gigabyte micro SD cards than it is for one of these cards. But again, you're paying for the form factor and less swapping, less chance of you running out of film, or if you need to film something continuously, then this would help in that situation as well. You're paying a premium for the convenience. So either way, there's a new king on top, 512. That's a pretty good number. And yeah, we're halfway to a terabyte. Halfway to a terabyte on a micro SD card. Really makes you think, why phones such as Apple are not allowing micro SD cards. Because, what is it, 32 gigabytes and then 128, 256 or something like that are the standard sizes. Hey, one of these, and I don't think anyone's ever complained about the size of a micro SD card, and you could double or triple your phone's internal memory with one card. That would be super, super cool to have, but more and more phones are turning away from the expandable micro SD card slot, which is, I feel, really unfortunate. But hey, there you have it. And I'm sure lots of people are still going to find lots of uses for this thing. All right. So that was just a quick bit of some new technology. Why don't we go ahead and talk about... All right. How about some more technology? And this one is another release date. We'll do 3 pieces of gadget in a row. So the first one, 512 gigabyte micro SD card coming in February. This next one is Red's Hydrogen 1 smartphone. Will ship this summer. And this thing, personally, I love the look of this thing. It looks industrial. It looks, kind of bulky. I love it. I love everything about this camera. And I call it, I just said camera for very obvious reasons. It's made by Red, which makes a lot of movie cameras. Those things run you $40,000, $80,000 a piece. This phone, though, competing more at the high end of phones, but it's mainly going to be attractive for its camera. So Red's much hyped Hydrogen One smartphone is edging ever closer to market. And by the way, this is coming from Engadget, Miss Rachel England, saying that according to an update from its creators and in a thread on the camera company's Red user forums, the maker of the holographic display phone have revealed pre-order will open probably in April, with an official ship date sometime in summer. And details beyond that are vague, but according to the post, carrier support for the phone is unprecedented, and social media partners will include the big dogs. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, what have you. Yeah, again, the big dogs. So the update also included a reiteration of the phone specs, where it will come with an 835X processor from Snapdragon, Qualcomm, which is either unlocked or carrier specific, one headphone jack, so it will have the 3.5mm headphone jack, and a dual SIM slot. So hey, we just talked about SIM cards, and now you're looking at maybe a terabyte of storage if you really spring for all the bells and whistles. Either way, it's also slated to be slightly bigger than the other 5.7-inch cell phones and slightly thicker. And the creator wrote, "Think solid." But here's the cool part. The battery is a 4,500 milliamp battery. So, compare that to an iPhone, which is like 3,000 or so. It's going to last quite a while. And so they also said it has 4V purpose, which is 4 view. And this is what makes the Hydrogen One exciting on paper, as the author notes, saying that with it, the phone can handle normal 2D media, stereo 3D, augmented reality, virtual reality, and mixed reality without additional glasses or headsets, and that the company hasn't been forthcoming on explaining how this will work, although it did offer a slightly bemusing description on its update, saying that the 4V files match the pixel resolution of a traditional 2D file, which is great for downloading. The resolution perception is just different, where the horizontal resolution of 2D is now split into depth layers. All right, it's a bit weird. And it gives a completely different feeling. All the pixels are there, but instead of looking at it or, looking at a picture, you are immersed in the image, and saying it is quite spectacular. So, it seems like they've layered a couple of LED panels, and maybe they're going to add some kind of weird depth looking thing to it. Either way, this is either going to be a huge flop and the technology is just not going to work, it's not going to look good, and people will quickly forget it, or it's going to be a fan favorite. It's going to be kind of like the Droid Razr, or one of these other phones that people just can't seem to forget about. But I think I'm really excited for this. It looks really cool in its mock-ups. We haven't actually seen an official product yet, but sometime in summer, we will definitely be talking about the Red Hydrogen One smartphone again. Can't wait to see it. So, and like I said, we're doing 3 different products. Now, this next one, I think we had a story. I don't know if I did it yesterday or I didn't, but it doesn't matter. More information today, and it's about, this article is from CNET, and it's about the Apple HomePod, where the Apple HomePod is coming February 9th. So just over 2 weeks away. February 9th. Yeah, so that'll be a Friday, 2 weeks from now. And yeah, pre-orders are open this Friday. And yeah, again, CNET, they're saying that the speaker, they're saying that the HomePod is on the home stretch. Apple's first smart speaker will go on sale February 9th in the US, the UK, and Australia. And you'll be able to pre-order it on Apple's website starting Friday or Saturday in Australia. So they said that it will go on sale for $350 or 320 pounds or 500 Australian dollar dues. And let's see, white and space gray, and they say that the speaker faces a challenging road ahead, where Apple botched its debut by delaying the home speaker that was expected in December, and instead bringing the speaker to market a little bit later, which I think a lot of people would have much rather had it come out during the holidays when people are actively looking for things to buy. And they said that the HomePod will also have to go up against the Echo lineup, which first launched about 3 years ago. Man, time sure does fly. And they said that the Google Home speakers also went on sale about 2 years ago. So, yeah, Apple has a lot of ground to make up, and it just doesn't have as robust of a lineup as the other two do. So, Apple is, of course, only offering the one speaker, but industry watchers warn against writing off a new Apple product before it goes on sale, pointing to the fact that Apple fans have a strong loyalty and, well, Apple has a tendency to come to market late, but when they do come to market, they sometimes completely dominate it. See tablets and smartphones. So they said that in Apple's announcement Tuesday, it said that the HomePod will support messaging apps, so users can ask Siri to send a message to a friend. Other tools available through Siri Kit will include reminders, note-taking, to-do list, and they also said that the HomePod can also control smart home gadgets such as lights and thermostats. So far, it sounds like pretty common everyday things, but of course, it's going to be better integrated with Apple products. That's going to be its big thing. So they said that it may seem underwhelming for those who are used to Echo or Google Home products because, well, again, they've been out for 2 years and they've had dozens and if not hundreds at this point of different skills already developed for them and other companies bringing their applications to it. Not saying that it's impossible for Apple to do this, just saying that it's going to take a couple of weeks or months before the big players fully integrate themselves with the Apple HomePod. And yeah, you see somewhat similar or on par, kind of workings with Apple. So they let's see, the HomePod was also noticeably absent at CES earlier this month, which is also horrible because that may not seem like a lot, but it really does mean a lot because a lot of companies go out there, and if you were out there this year, you know for a fact that Amazon Alexa and the Google Home, all of these, they were fully integrated into almost every new product that it made sense or in some cases made no sense in actually working with. But the fact that Apple wasn't there meant that they have another year where companies are developing new products for next year that they won't be thinking of Apple. So, the article wraps up there. Some things about, the fact that they are the world's most highly valued company in terms of, cash, and they have $252 billion in its war chest to, kind of get the HomePod off and running. But you can see that, Apple has quite a battle ahead of it. It's coming in it's coming in at the high end of the spectrum, $350. That is incredibly expensive for a smart speaker, and of course, a lot of people's first smart speakers. It's coming in late, so it's not as useful as some of the others right off the bat. It's using Siri, which I think we have not seen the level of development from Siri as we have from the Echo or Google Home. I mean, Apple is really starting off on the back foot, so hey, we'll see what happens. But there you have it. So again, just to recap, the 512 gigabyte microSD card coming soon in February, the red Hydrogen 1 smartphone coming this summer, and the Apple HomePod coming in just a couple of weeks. We'll be sure to check up on those as they are released. All right, now how about a service? This is not a product, but this is a service, and it's interesting because Xbox has announced something that I think will make a lot of people very interested, and at the same time, kind of say, what took you so long? So this article coming to us from Gadget, Mr. John Fingus. And yeah, they say that Microsoft's Xbox exclusives will come to Game Pass on launch day. And this is a big deal. This is a huge deal. Saying that to date, the Xbox Game Pass has been a tricky value proposition. While there have been a few recent hits, it frequently comes across as a clearinghouse for games whose best days are over. And of course, you'll have a better reason to subscribe going forward, though, where Microsoft has promised to add all of its in-house Xbox exclusives to Game Pass the moment that they're available. Now that's really cool. Such as Sea of Thieves will be one of the first when it launches on March 20th, and this should also include the long-delayed Crackdown 3, and as well as future games and franchises like Halo and Gears of War, which, by the way, Halo and Gears of War have really been console pushers. They've been the games that they release, and they say, hey, if you want to play this game and you want to play in all of its glory, you really have to get the new console. And the fact that they are pushing it with their service, their free game service, really exciting, because it's like $60 for 6 months, and just one of these games runs you $60. So if you play even one of them over the course of the 6 months, while you don't necessarily own the game forever, your value proposition is pretty obvious. So they let's see, March 20th, again, 6 months, $60, March 20th. If you are a dyed-in-the-wool Xbox One fan, the promise of launch day titles makes it tempting. And of course, provided Microsoft releases at least one game you want each year, the service suddenly becomes a better bargain. And you're receiving the title you want, plus a slew of extras. And of course, you can always pay for those few months you intend to play a new game and cancel afterwards. So, yeah, but I think the downside of this is something we've all already kind of settled with, where if you purchase, let's say, a song, people aren't really buying music anymore. They're subscribing to Spotify, Pandora, what have you. They're subscribing to services that let you listen to as much music as you want, more music than you would ever listen to if you had to buy it, album by album, single by single. But if you don't keep paying the money, if you don't keep paying the monthly fee, you don't get access to that anymore. And so you don't technically own it, you just have access to it, assuming you have continual payments. That's something it looks like Microsoft is trying to lean towards. And it works with music, works with videos and DVDs and things like that. I mean, just look at Netflix and Hulu. It works for those. I don't see much of a reason why this also wouldn't work on Xbox. So they said that the catch, of course, is that it's only Microsoft games that are getting the day one treatment, and this doesn't help you if all you're mainly interested in is third-party games. And they said that it could be helpful even if you don't subscribe, though, as Microsoft now has a stronger incentive to shore up the Xbox One's game library. And they said that it needs those launch day games to make Game Pass as enticing as possible. And I also like the fact that a lot of these games are going to work with Windows 10 as well. Very important to note. So, with that being said, we don't have time to get into some of these other stories, but some that we didn't get to, if you feel you want to go check it out. Netflix, for those of you not paying attention, Netflix completely crushed its fourth quarter predictions on how many new subscribers it was going to get, and the stocks jumped, and now Netflix is valued at over $100 billion. Netflix is going just fine. Firefox continues to push updates. You can check that out. If you're a Firefox fan, be sure to update as soon as you can. And Verizon will not be using its tax cuts to improve their network, but rather using it to shore up their accounting. Makes perfect sense. We knew they were going to do it, and hey, it is what it is. Folks, those stories and more at computeramerica.com. If you missed our guest, Square Panda, be sure to check out that interview. It was a lot of fun about early childhood education. Absolutely. So, in the meantime, everyone, thank you so much. Tune in tomorrow as we have with us on the show Other World Computing. You may remember them. They were a sponsor of the show. And of course, they are coming back to talk all about their different products. They are a Mac vendor. And hey, it's going to be a lot of fun to hear about what they have available. Folks, until next time, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday, check us out, Computer America. Have a great one. Bye-bye.